Hello, dears. It feels like forever. Rarity Belle at your service, more commonly known as simply Rarity, business pony and expert dressmaker, and holder of the element of harmony known as generosity. It's been over a couple of weeks since the ordeal with that brute of a chaos spirit Discord. Everyone else seems to be holding together all right. Scootaloo and Rainbow Dash seem to be hanging out more than usual. Miss Cheerily says Fluttershy just recently asked for advice on how to handle difficult fillies. Maybe she wants to give babysitting one more shot? As for myself, I'm doing perfectly well. I can now look at jewelry without vomiting. I can now look at the rocks outside without falling into fits of self-loathing. I only break out into a cold sweat now when touching diamonds, rather than all gems. And the nightmares where a handsome prince arrives to woo me, only to tell me his name is Tom and turn into a giant boulder, now only happen every other night. Yes, I'd say I've recovered perfectly. Now if only Pinkie Pie would stop mentioning how none of my dresses have those sparkly gems in them anymore, and Twilight would stop asking why I'm practically throwing away gemstones to Spike to devour whenever he visits. And I wish Fluttershy would stop telling me that I need to open up and talk more about what happened. Since we weren't ourselves at the time, Pinkie Pie insisted on coming up with nicknames for ourselves when we were under Discord's corruption. She says she can't decide if she should go with Verigreed for me since it's more identifiable, or Greedity because it rolls off the tongue better. I tell Pinkie Pie in no uncertain terms that I do not care one way or the other, and that I have no interest in this particular project of hers, and that she should not discuss it with me further in any shape or form. What am I supposed to say? That Discord barely said a word to me and simply offered me what I thought were some pretty treasures? Maybe I should take a page out of Liar Jack's book and say, I resisted all his temptations like pure innocent Fluttershy, and he had to force me to be selfish. But I think we've all had our share of lies for one lifetime after this. And for the first time since I was chosen to be worthy of the element of generosity, I'm suddenly questioning if I really am. As a fashionista, I've dealt with more than my share of hecklers and mudslingers who've tried to paint me as some greedy nag who'd trade her own friends in for some baubles. I still refuse to dignify their slander with an answer. But now I've found myself wondering, was I really being generous for the sake of others? Or because I couldn't stand to look at anything that didn't fit my view of what was pretty, and had to force it to be that way? Am I like Discord? I know the way the world should and should not be, so anything that conflicts with that has to change, no matter what. But isn't that the way it is with every pony? Pinkie thinks others should always be happy, and sure seems to go out of her way for that sake. Fluttershy wants everyone to be kind. However, she doesn't go around bossing everyone to be kind, because then that wouldn't be kind. Blast it all! Blast it all! May Celestia take it all and banish it to the moon! Was I that desperate for a stallion in my life, that I was willing to love what I thought was a giant diamond? I can bedazzle practically any stallion of my choice, so why don't I just find one worth of my time, and finally have my prince? Or did Blue Blood really ruin a lifetime goal of mine so utterly, that it made me want to be with something I knew couldn't cheat on me and treat me wrong? Did I let that arrogant fool get to me that much? Even after I lost my temper and gave him the talking to he so richly deserved, am I really still letting that upper-class reject color my thinking? I know Spike would move mountains for me if I wanted. It's actually a little painful, knowing even he wouldn't come to my side, considering how I was acting when I was Discord's pawn. Thankfully, he didn't hear me call him Twilight's little minion. At least Sweetie Belle didn't have to see me like that. She was as insane as all the other ponies in Ponyville were at that point. I swear, I wish Celestia would let me take a sledgehammer to Discord's statue. Sweetie Belle actually threw out her doll collection because they were giving her nightmares. I had to save them from the garbage and hide them away. I know she'll thank me, eventually. Cheerily and the parents of all the fillies and colts in town are trying their hardest to help their children recover, but we're all dealing with what Discord did to us. Celestia, bless her soul, I can tell Cheerily's been hurt as bad as the rest of us, but she still wants her students to bloom. Sometimes I wonder if being a good florist was what she was good at, but wasn't what made her happy. Princess Celestia actually put out a royal mandate for counselors from all over Equestria to visit Ponyville, and all the other places Discord had damaged. But there are so many of us who were tainted by Discord. and only so few ponies whose special talent is giving ponies the therapy they need now. So the doctors are focusing on those of us who really need help. Big Macintosh apparently can now stay in the same room with a dog without breaking down into a nervous wreck. I'll admit I don't know Applejack's brother all that well, but seeing that mountain of strength and silent will so damaged like that adds a whole new flavor of wrongness. But after the first 2 weeks, we've been able to at least all pretend that nothing had happened, able to play act through our lives. Well, most of us. My oh-so-loving and attentive parents practically fled Ponyville with photo finish on the first Pegasi flight to the Southern Islands as part of their therapy. I didn't ask what Discord made them do, but their bodies were covered in horseshoe marks whose indentations bore the garish, tacky brand names they always wore. And that, of course, leaves me with Sweetie Belle. Again. I swear to Celestia herself, I spend more time raising my little sister than my parents do. Back after a week's vacation. I can't believe I still fall for that lie. This isn't the first time Sweetie has plagued my home for more than a month. I'm more of a mother than Mother is. Ugh! This is added stress I do not need. Yes, it took her nearly changing her name to Sweet Apple and joining Applejack's family to get me to appreciate her again. Moving on. Spike keeps visiting. He keeps asking if there's anything he can do for me. I give him some meaningless task or another until he's satisfied for the day and leaves. I can't bear the idea of using him for real workloads. Most ponies aren't interested in buying new dresses right now anyway. All my orders are from out of town. Maybe I should just tell Spike that he's too young for me, and by the time he hits adulthood I'll be in a rocking chair. But he's about the only one in Ponyville who didn't suffer the same change the rest of us did. Hurting his feelings would be the single most unladylike thing I could possibly do. I've already thrown away the orders for dozens of the ugly dresses I made for my friends that one time. The ones which hoity-toity publicly ridiculed. Once they were all as mad as hatters, the population of Ponyville suddenly couldn't get enough of those eyesores. It was an unspoken agreement that I wouldn't force them to honor orders they made while completely out of their gourds. Thanks Celestia her day and Luna her night that Applejack and the others volunteered to take Tom, the boulder, away and promised to drop him, the thing in the middle of Froggy Bottom Bog where the frogs and Hydra could have it. Originally, I'd wanted to arrange for the boulder to be brought to Appaloosa, smashed into 1,000,000 pieces of rubble, then scattered across several miles of open desert. But Applejack convinced me this would be a simpler substitute. Twilight at first calmly suggested that I should keep it as a reminder of the hardships endured, and make myself a better pony from the experience. I calmly suggested in return Twilight should go to Pony Hill. Thankfully, she forgave me later, even if she admitted it was partially her fault. With it gone, I could finally walk around the shop without thinking every big round shadow I saw was it following me somehow. At least those nightmares had stopped.
Is here to stay. My little pony, you know we're still the very best friends.
The door to my workroom smashes open into splinters. Tom rolls in, carrying a bouquet of flowers in its cracks. No! No, go away! I trot backwards. It rolls closer. A voice rumbles.
I love you more than anything, Rarity, my love. And we shall be together forever!
The cockatrice crawls out of the bouquet and glares at me. My insides turn colder than ice. I'm numb. I see, hear, think, but cannot move. Can't move. Can't speak. I feel everything on the outside, but so empty on the inside. I see the grey statue of a unicorn in one of my mirrors.
Now, my rock princess, let us be off. Attendants!
Dozens of smaller rocks roll in behind Tom and push me along, taking one of my wedding dresses and rolling it onto me. I can't move. I can't speak. I'm only their dress-up doll.
Now, let us be off on our happily ever after. Forever!
I awaken, snapping to my forehooves. I'd fallen asleep? In the middle of the day? How vulgar. Thank goodness no one had bore witness to such a travesty. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe. I stood in my stockroom looking at my dresses, all festooned with jewels I had dug up myself. Even my earliest designs had always included stones of some sort, and they all reflected back at me as I stood looking at them, seeing a mare aged before her time, tired, weary, invisible weights dragging behind her. And I imagined for one brief moment Discord's sneering face on them all. I screamed. Using my horn, I tore off the gems I had so carefully and painstakingly placed myself. Destroying hours, days, weeks worth of work in minutes, snarling and cursing and sobbing and screaming and stomping on them. How dare they betray me? How dare they lead me astray? Jules had helped me find my cutie mark, and helped me realize my special talent for creating things of beauty. How dare beauty betray me? How dare it turn me into something I wasn't? I tossed the jewels out windows, breaking glass. I knocked over mannequins, ripping off jewelry and throwing them against the walls. I didn't show mercy to one precious jewel or treasure. I showed no pity to any pretty, shiny rock. The dresses were torn to shreds. I kept screaming. I kept snarling. I stamped my hooves like a mad pony.
Rarity?
I heard a small voice like a sleigh bell. I turned and hissed. Sweetie cried out in fear, looking at the ugly thing wearing her sister's face.
Rarity, the dresses! What are you...
I'm fixing them!
But you said those didn't work without the...
I said, I'm fixing them, you stupid filly! Don't you dare talk back to your elders! A sharp circlet whizzed by Sweetie Belle's head and embedded itself in the wall behind her. A few severed threads of her mane floated to the floor. Sweetie Belle fell to her knees and tried to make herself as small as possible. Reality crashed down on top of me like Luna's moon fallen from orbit. What had I done? What had I done? I was at Sweetie Belle's side in an instant, almost as though I had spontaneously learned to teleport. Sweetie Belle shrank a little at my touch. I examined her. Thankfully the circlet had missed her, but it had been at eye level. On one hoof I knew I hadn't exactly been aiming, but it could have just as easily landed a few more inches to my right at my sister. I'm sorry, Sweetie Belle, I'm just so sorry. Big Sister just did a very bad thing just now, and she's sorry. You haven't done a single thing wrong. Big Sister's just tired right now. I promise, Big Sister's not angry at you. Big Sister's not going to hurt you. Big Sister won't shout at you again. Big Sister isn't going to do anything bad to you. Big Sister's just upset. Big Sister's ashamed that she could ever consider a jewel to be the most wonderful thing in the world. I promise, Big Sister's not angry at you. Sweetie Belle finally stopped shaking, and her eyes, red with tears, regarded me timidly.
What is the most wonderful thing?
I nuzzled her. You are, sweetie. You're the most wonderful and beautiful thing in the world to me. Because you're not a thing. You're my baby sister. There's only one of you. That makes you more precious than 1,000 diamonds. And it makes you more special than a million jewels. Jewels can't tell me how much they love me, and they can't listen when I tell them how much I love them. You're the most important thing in the world to me. We just sat there together for over an hour, watching the sunset through the broken window before I put a cloth over it to keep the night air from getting in. No offense to Princess Luna. Come on now, let's get this place cleaned up and go to bed. I promise you can help.
I can?
Helping me has always been a joy to Sweetie, no matter the task, no matter how small or big. You can't buy that kind of devotion. Yes, dear, you are, after all, my most beautiful and most wonderful treasure. A few days and a very large cleanup and trip to the spa for just me and Sweetie Belle later. I was in the shop again, as normal. For a tiny bit, it felt like the precious status quo we all lived for was again restored. Then came a jingle at the door. A little violet-pink pony with a white and purple mane came inside. The filly moved with the uppity air of an heiress, but her motions reminded me a bit of a toy doll. Forced, almost mechanical, like she was putting conscious effort into her body language. Her name flashed through my mind as I saw what she was wearing and her cutie mark, and my coat became matted with sweat.
Greetings, Miss Rarity.
Like her body language, her voice was prim and proper, with a healthy sprinkling of spoiled arrogance, but it also seemed forced. I was considered part of the upper crust somewhat in Ponyville, even if to some, like the Tiaras, I was looked down upon for being a unicorn. Welcome to the Carousel Boutique, young miss. What can I help you with today? The filly moved closer. I took a step back. The filly didn't notice, or pretended not to, speaking with a sense of entitlement.
Your little store has the honor of accepting a very important commission from me, Miss Rarity. I expect it to be completed before the week is out. I assume this won't be a problem for a store with so little business as yours.
I kept my business face on. It was a struggle. Stupid little filly, I likely do more work in a week than any member of your family does in a year. So, tell me about this dress of yours you would like me to complete. I finally realized how peculiar it was that a spoiled brat like this filly would be without any escort. The filly pulled out a crudely drawn figure from a saddlebag I hadn't noticed before. Myself missing a detail? How is that possible? Then again, I was trying my hardest not to think about how she was wearing her namesake on her head, with measurements apparently written by someone else. It was a dress designed for an adult mare, judging by the measurements. The design was excessive and a half, drawn with little sense of style and far more flair than substance.
I trust you'll be able to follow the instructions with no real problems. Ignore what the notes say. Include at least 5 times as many diamonds as that. And make sure they're the largest you have. I know you're a so-called expert at finding diamonds, so no excuses. Remember, 5 times as many as...
She practically shoved the design in my face. And I saw them. Diamonds. All over the gaudy dress, with a drawing of one by the side, as if for example. Diamond Tiara continued to ramble for several seconds, but I wasn't listening anymore. All I saw was myself, ripping a stone wall to pieces and ruining my appearance, all for the sake of something pretty, and being vicious to my friends for no good reason, convinced that they wanted it for themselves. After finding out it was all a lie, I threw it out at once, and felt the crushing shame inside me for acting absolutely no different from this spoiled brat, but several times worse. I was deluded into thinking something worthless was precious, but how much of the rest was me? My head hurt as my actions ran through my head. I had been so wretched.
Are you even listening to me, you narwhal?
Diamond Tiara shouted out, her diamond tiara actually looking rather tilted slightly atop her agitated head. No, and get out.
What?
Diamond Tiara screeched in total disbelief. When was the last time anyone had said no to her besides her parents? I said no! You can take your business elsewhere! Now get out! And don't you dare come near my store again!
You can't...
No! Here is something you can't do! I used my horn's magic to lift the suddenly confused and angry, then very scared diamond tiara. I drank it in. So, who's a narwhal now? Diamond tiara was shaking. I leaned in close to the helpless filly. Now listen here, you greedy little fool. If I ever catch you, or hear that you called my little sister Narwhal, I am telling your teacher, and I promise she'll listen to me. And if I find you near my home again, I'll see you in a dungeon for trespassing. And I promise that little revenge fantasy that must already be playing in your empty head won't work. My customers will never listen to anything you or your parents say.
My parents?
Diamond Tiara actually began to snarl, but then I telekinetically tossed her out. Her diamond tiara then fell off of her, and I practically threw it at her as the spoiled filly left in tears, picking it up in her teeth and running. My adrenaline spent, I leaned against the wall. What I had done played over and over in my mind until Sweetie Belle came home.
Big sister? Are you okay?
I must have looked worse than I normally did these last few weeks. It's not, dear, just... I'm... A classmate of yours showed up for a dress to be made, but I had to turn it down.
Diamond tiara?
Sweetie Belle shrank back as I glared at her for saying that word. Yes, dearie, if you must know, it was. Don't worry, she didn't cause any trouble.
Was she acting weird like at school?
What do you mean, acting weird?
Well, she doesn't really bully us anymore.
I blinked, suddenly feeling very ugly. Really?
Well, she doesn't even look at us anymore, or anyone. Once school started again, Miss Turley keeps asking her to pay attention in class. I guess she did that before, but back then she acted bored. Now it's like like she's somewhere else.
So, would you say she's being nicer?
Not really. Yes. No. Maybe? She completely ignores us instead of taunting us, but she keeps screaming at Silver Spoon.
What? Isn't Silver Spoon her best... only friend?
Yes. Apple Bloom thought it was weird too. I think what she said was, "What the heck is that about?" or something. Ever since school started again, every time Silver Spoon tries to talk to her, Tiara just yells at her. Calls her a good-for-nothing four-eyes. Says Silver Spoon's cutie mark is stupid. Says it means she's only good for being rich and she isn't good at anything and she's worthless. Shirley gave Tiara a timeout and Silver Spoon, I think she was crying, a visit to the counselor after that. Later, when Miss Shirley was talking to Tiara, Tiara shouted that she wished you hadn't beaten Discord and that everyone in Ponyville was still crazy. I think she might have gotten suspended for the week after that.
I just listened. I could only listen. There was clearly something larger at play here. That was when I noticed a piece of paper still on the floor. I levitated it closer to me. It was Tiara's sketch, with her name on it. I finally noticed a small note scrawled in the corner. Sweetie Belle did as well.
Mama's?
Sweetie Belle read it out loud.
I didn't know she had a mom.
Eh? I thought I'd already had that talk with Sweetie Belle about where foals came from.
Well, when Shirley wants to talk to her parents, it's only her dad who ever shows up. She always talks about how great her dad is, but never talks about her mom. So we figured she didn't have one.
Everyone has a mother, Sweetie Belle. Everyone. Everyone is some mother's child. I took the paper with me. Sweetie Belle and I spent the rest of the evening in relative silence. I asked about her day, and she asked bits about mine. Cheerilee was falling back, apparently, on her old tactic of trying to relate to her students by sharing her own personal hardships. Apparently, Cheerilee had been planting flowers in other ponies' heads after Discord had driven her mad. She also talked about how bottled-up feelings could hurt a pony worse than what caused those feelings in the first place.
It was really weird.
What, dear?
Seeing Silver Spoon cry. I didn't think she knew how to.
Of course, I thought to myself. The logic of a child, and most adults. Silver Spoon was bad, a bully, and therefore she had to be all bad. There couldn't be a single thing that made her a real pony, as opposed to a creature that lived only to make Sweetie Belle's life, and that of her friends, miserable. Well, you did say her only friend had just said some very awful things to her. Wouldn't you cry if Scootaloo or Apple Bloom said awful things to you?
But they never say awful things to me.
Like how you all fought in the royal garden?
I bet it was that bad dragon snake that made us do all that. It had to be, right?
To Sweetie Belle, the idea that she and her friends could have had a genuine fight instead of another one of their silly arguments obviously scared her. After all, weren't friends not supposed to fight? Wasn't that the point of being a friend? If you're sure it was, dear, then I'm sure too. I kept Tiara's sketch with me. She didn't come back for it. I wondered what deadly wrath she was convincing her father to bring down upon me, as though she was a princess and I was some faceless commoner. She couldn't appreciate that I had met Princess Celestia herself multiple times. I doubt her father would risk trying to cross a national hero, even to appease his daughter's demand. All the same, I watched my flanks for a few days. On a hunch, I made a few visits to the town records. I milked the gossip sources, filtered out the garbage from the facts, and, taking advantage of Celestia's decree, I paid a few visits to some of the visiting psychologists in town, but found they wouldn't answer my questions as a matter of course. All the same, in a few days I'd more or less learned what I needed to know. I closed the shop early and began to work. I told Sweetie Belle, "You should consider doing something nice for Silver Spoon." Of course, she looked at me like I had told her to give chocolates to Nightmare Moon. Sweetie Belle, being generous to people you like is easy. Being generous to strangers is simple. Being generous to people you don't like is neither easy nor simple. But it's also something that they can't imagine you doing for them. And the best gifts are sometimes the surprise kind.
But would you want someone who's awful to get a gift?
I thought about how to explain this as best I could. Sweetie Belle, I won't pretend that I thought there was any good in discord. But I didn't think there was any good in Nightmare Moon either. But I don't think Princess Luna is bad. And if there could be good in someone like Nightmare Moon, what about everyone else? Sweetie Belle looked at me with an admirable struggle to grasp the meaning of my message before saying,
But what does that have to do with giving a gift to a bad guy? Why give a bad guy something when you could give it to a good person instead?
Sweetie Belle, Nightmare Moon thought everyone was bad for not appreciating her night as much as Celestia's day. But we proved her wrong. We helped Luna out of that dark place inside herself. I've taught you that what others think does matter. I know that goes against a lot of what your teacher says, but if someone is awful to you, it's because they think they have a right to be awful towards you, because you're just something that looks like a pony but isn't one, or because they think you deserve to be awful towards. I'm sorry, Sweetie Belle, I really don't expect you to get any of this. But please, for your big sister, being generous to someone who doesn't like you and who you don't like can cause good things to happen. Sweetie Belle just nodded dumbly and wandered off, what I said churning in her skull in a soup of confusion. Hopefully my place of authority as her big sister would help her make the right decision. Meanwhile, I worked from sunrise to sunset, then slept until halfway through the following day. I also swallowed my pride and asked Fluttershy for help on the sewing. How did a mare whose special talent was animal care know more about sewing than me? I also did a lot of digging in the next few days. The diamond dogs knew to stay clear of me, but I also enlisted their help as well, which they reluctantly agreed to. It was like swallowing bitter tea mixed with cough medicine every time I was given one of the things I ordered them to find for me. But I endured. I let the sweat drip off me, felt my body shake until it was sore feeling them have contact with my body when I handled them. Somehow I endured. The dogs were very surprised at the end when I emptied out my saddlebags, giving them sapphires from my own collection in exchange for the that they dug up for me. I had to explain to them, slowly, that this was what was known as fair trade. To be fair, I had at first intended to simply take what I wanted and go, counting on their fear of me. Thankfully, I realized I wasn't their queen and had no right to tax them, no matter my fantasies. I was an artist and a business pony, not a tyrant. When I got home, I arranged the gems by size, weight, and so forth. The constant exposure wasn't pleasant, but I began to build up the tolerance I needed to work again. Maybe I was just being selfish again after all. Maybe I was just using this as an excuse to give myself what I needed to begin to work again without being scared to death of my own materials. Regardless, this had to be done. Sweetie Belle confessed she'd tried to talk to Silver Spoon, only for the filly to yell at her, asking if Sweetie Belle and the others were going to laugh at her too. Now that Diamond Tiara hated her too. Silver Spoon had apparently acted like a cornered animal. Cheerilee had broken things up, leaving the Cutie Mark Crusaders very confused. I knew they were simply too young to understand that a bully's greatest fear was being bullied. Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara now sat on opposite ends of the classroom, apparently. Silver Spoon had always been a follower, not a leader, and now she found herself alone. Of course she'd think that the fillies she had helped taunt were really just out to get back at her now that her protection was gone. I told Sweetie Belle not to give up, that Silver Spoon didn't know how to make real friends. She thought I was crazy. Maybe I am at this point. Maybe everyone in Ponyville is now. Who goes through what we did and comes out undamaged? 2 days later, in the early morning, having barely made my very real deadline, I trotted in front of the Tiara household. I knocked on the door and a gray earth pony opened it. I informed her that I had a personal delivery for the young lady of the household. Diamond Tiara trotted downstairs. When she saw me, her face contorted in rage.
You!
She glared at the older servant.
Throw her out!
The old maid looked ready to try her best. I quickly said, "I've brought you your commission, little Miss Tiara."
Huh?
Free of charge, and free delivery to you personally, on one condition.
Condition?
I knew I was on thin ice already, but what had to be said had to be said. I telekinetically opened the case I was carrying, showing her the newly made dress. However, the diamonds she insisted upon were tucked into compartments within the case. You sew in the diamonds yourself.
You dare!
You want to show your mother you still love her? You want to show her that you haven't given up on her? That you still believe in her? That she's still your mother even if your father says otherwise, young lady? That you're still waiting for her to get better? The best gifts, little filly, aren't the most expensive ones. They're the ones you've put the most time into yourself. The ones you've put your own effort into. They're the ones that show you really care about the person you're giving the gift to. Diamond Tiara's jaw hung limply. I gave the most formal, polite, and proper farewell fit for high society and left. Behind me I heard heavy hoof falls and a quick shuffling noise. A peek through a window confirmed what I imagined. A stallion was passing by Diamond Tiara, who was hiding the case behind the servant. I managed to smile. Maybe I was being foolish, but I knew this wasn't pointless, or at least I didn't believe it was, and I think I finally understand. Making things beautiful and making beautiful things is simply what I am good at. A pony is not a slave to their cutie mark, no matter what they teach you in school. It's your guide, not your master. My element and my cutie mark are not the same thing, have never been the same thing, and I was a fool for believing they were. If making beautiful things and making things beautiful is what I'm good at, and my element is to be generous towards others, of course I'll share my talent with them. But talent isn't the only thing I can share. Letting my sister help, spending time with others, those are generosities too, not merely giving away things. And I should have remembered that when Twilight's spell made me relive those moments I'd been true to that inner spirit. But I was too scared of what I had done. I'll never know how much of what I did was Discord's taint or my own choices. But I'm not ashamed anymore. Not as long as I remember that no matter what riches cross my path, my greatest treasure is at home, and she is waiting for me. And whether I find someone to live my life with is up to me. For the first time in weeks, I finally feel free.
Diamond Tiara carried the bag in her mouth. Tiny red marks surrounded her front hooves and face. Doing sewing work when you didn't have a magic horn was difficult in the extreme. A large white burly Pegasus pony walked next to her, as did one of her family's servants, because there was no way in pony hell that this place would ever let a filly within these walls without adult protection. The servant, however, had promised not to tell Onyx Tiara where his daughter had really been this afternoon. Diamond Tiara glimpsed in only one of the other rooms and wished she hadn't. The sight of a pink Pegasus with stumps for wings mindlessly singing to herself was something she could have lived happily without.
"Screwball, you got a visitor!"
said the burly Pegasus, sliding the door's small hatch open. Diamond Tiara felt a wave of disgust at the oversized feather duster. Her name is Golden Tiara.
Oh, is that so?
Spoke an adult earth pony on the other side. She had a pink-purple coat and a purple mane with white stripes.
How could it be on this special of days?
Diamond Tiara pushed the bag through the slot lower on the door. Happy birthday, Mama.
Oh, baby. Is that you? Does Dia know you're here?
Of course he does. He's hoping very much that you'll get better. Diamond Tiara's mother opened the bag and examined the dress from every angle, trying it on in every way except the way it was meant to be worn.
Oh, is this for me? Oh, it's so pretty. Did you do this? It's so wonderful. Come to Mommy.
Diamond Tiara didn't even hesitate. She pressed herself against the door, hearing her mother's heartbeat, just as her mother heard hers.
You know, dear, the world was finally right again a few weeks ago. Everything stopped being confusing and everything made sense again. The doctors even started making sense and let me and everybody else out. Then that rainbow came and the world was confusing again. But don't worry, I'm sure the world won't be confusing again really soon. If it could all make sense again once, I'm sure it'll make sense again real soon, dear. Then Mommy will be back home. I bet it'll be in time for your birthday. You'd like Mama to be there, yes, dear?
Yes, Mama. That would be very nice. Diamond Tiara realized she had to end this conversation now. I'm sorry, Mama. I have to go now. Daddy's waiting.
Okay, sweetie. Tell Dearest that his princess still loves her prince when you see him.
I will, Mama. Bye. She ran. She couldn't bear to have her mother see or hear her crying.
Want to see more? Then get over here.